1980 or 81. I was in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I lived there for 6 years, and that's where I started my career as a speaker and trainer. And I had put myself out there and, had my brochures I was giving to everybody that breathed, and I was doing the best I could to get my name into the marketplace at the time. I started my speaking career in about 1976. And so here we were a few years into it, and I'm sitting at my desk in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I get a call. I think it was like 8 o'clock in the morning. Guy said, "Jim, this is Ben Blackstock. I'm the executive director for the Oklahoma Press Association, and we have a meeting today in Oklahoma City." I said, "Nice to meet you." He said, "We need you as our speaker." I said, "Yeah, right. You're 140 miles away or whatever it is, and you need a speaker today. I assume it's a luncheon." He said, "Yes, as a matter of fact, it is." Aha. I said, "Your speaker canceled, didn't he?" He said, "Well, yeah." I said, "Okay, so last minute fill-in, you need me. Tell me about the meeting." And he told me. And I said, "What topic area do you need covered?" He said, "I'd like you to talk about leadership and interpersonal relations." And I said, "Okay, I'm your guy. I will be there." So I ran home, put on a suit, grabbed a couple of notes, jumped in my car, drove to Oklahoma City, went to the hotel, went in and met Ben, schmoozed with the crowd a little bit, sat in the back and waited to be introduced, did my presentation, and went home. I didn't think anything more of it except to write a thank you letter at the end. I just did a nice thing for somebody, and I don't even know if I got paid. It may have been a last-minute fill-in that didn't have a fee, or it may have been a small fee, but it certainly wasn't a regular engagement by any standard. And so I just thought, well, that was nice, and I hope I've spread some goodwill and I'll get some business from it. But I didn't pick up a bunch of business cards or make much of a structured follow-through out of it. Fast forward, 6 years later. 6 years later, I've moved to California. I've got a new business there with a business partner, former college professor, Tony Alessandra, Dr. Tony Alessandra, who's my co-author and best friend, and we've done lots of work together. At that time, we were full-fledged business partners. And I was sitting in the office, and I got a phone call from Belgium. I said, "This is Jim Cathcart." "Oh, Jim, thank heavens I found you. This is Michael Redwine. I'm in Antwerp, Belgium, and my boss is coming to America to interview some companies that might do sales training for our team over here in Europe." "Really? How cool is that?" "Okay." He said, "Where are you located?" And worked out an appointment. So I went to the office that day, and my office was in La Jolla Shores in San Diego, right down 1 block from the beach, maybe half a block from the beach. And it was a fabulous location. I was sitting there in the office that day, polo shirt and slacks, which was my typical attire at the office back then. And in comes Peter Kuteman from Antwerp, Belgium. Peter's got on a double-breasted suit with a vest, and he's got a big handlebar mustache, and he's about my age, maybe a little bit younger, but a really fun guy. And he came in and shook my hand, and we sat there and talked for, I don't know, an hour or two about his company and about how I could help his company. And then he said, "Could you recommend a place for dinner?" And I made a recommendation of a couple of restaurants and shook his hand and said, "Have a nice day." Now, I could have been a whole lot more proactive. I didn't think about it at the time, but I could have arranged for a pickup at the airport. I could have helped with his lodging. I could have joined him at dinner. I could have put a lot more thinking into that, but I didn't. So Peter goes back to Europe. I get a call from Michael. He said, "Jim, you're the guy." I said, "Wonderful." And I ended up going to Europe 6 different trips. I spoke in Antwerp, I spoke in Brussels, Monte Carlo, that wasn't a bad gig, Aberdeen, Scotland, all over the place for Peter's company. And then years later, he brought me back again to Monte Carlo. And I still get Christmas cards with him. I'm still in touch with him today. Now, I'm going to weave all this together in a minute. It'll make sense. I was sitting in Peter's office, and I said, "Peter, why did you choose me?" He said, "Well, I had my associate, Michael Redwine, set up a series of appointments for me. And so I flew into New York, and I went to see some people there, and then I went to Washington, D.C., and then I went to Chicago, and then I came to California, and I saw you. And he said, you know, in those other cities, they all met me with a limo. They all wined and dined me. They took me to their elegant offices up on the 18th floor of the building and showed me the view of the city and showed me all their credentials on the wall. And then I came out here, and you were totally appropriate and businesslike, but you didn't try to bowl me over with all kinds of entertainment. You just sat down and told me the truth and talked with me and listened to me. And I looked at the way you interacted with your colleagues and your staff, and I decided I want my people to be like you. Wow, what a compliment. What a compliment. So I went to Michael Redwine, and I said, Michael, where in the world did you find out about me? He said, my father-in-law. Huh? Ben Blackstock in Oklahoma City. I'm marrying his daughter soon. And I was talking with him one day, and I said, you know any really good sales trainers? And he said, yeah, there was a guy a few years ago that spoke, or well, in that case, 6 years ago, who spoke at one of our meetings, and he was just, you know, he was totally there for us and on top of the thing and did the job very well, and you ought to contact him. He said, I didn't know where to find you. He didn't either. So I called around until we found somebody who knew that you had moved to California, and then, you know, somehow they, oh my gosh. They jumped through hoops, crawled under wire and everything to find me. 6 years later, let me ask you a question. What's a client worth? How much business is going to come from one client that doesn't have a big deal for you today? I don't know.